Welcome into the Pro Football Network YouTube channel. My name is Dalton Miller, and today we're going to be running through my power rankings for every team after the NFL draft. Before we get in the content of today's video, make sure you guys are liking this video. Make sure you guys are subscribing to the channel, and make sure that you guys are hitting that bell on the screen because we have a lot more content coming your way, and you are not going to want to miss it. Now, let's get into the power rankings. At number 32, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask are the quarterbacks in the building. Even though the Buccaneers still have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin on the outside, it is hard to imagine their offense being on par with the unit they fielded with Tom Brady a season ago. It's still a bit early to completely bury Baker Mayfield, but given the circumstances around his injury, rehab, and situation in Carolina, it takes some imagination to see how he returns to his 2020 self. At number 31, the Arizona Cardinals. Although there's a decent chance that Kyler Murray will be able to play most of the 2023 NFL season, even after tearing his ACL and meniscus in December, no two bodies are the same, and each player's recovery process is different. Additionally, the Cardinals roster is not currently in a position to succeed unless Murray is at 100% health and he is able to move and shake defenders in the same way he was able to before his injury. While the offensive depth chart is far from a travesty, the defense has a long way to go. And with an entirely new and unproven coaching staff coming in, it's likely the Cardinals need some time to progress in their new environment. At number 30, we have the Atlanta Falcons. Arthur Smith zigging while the rest of the NFL zags, and it may be his superpower. While the rest of the league is spreading out more and more, Smith would probably rather bring the wishbone back and run nothing but buck sweeps and play action. The offensive skill positions are solid, and the offensive line fits neatly into Smith's scheme. Atlanta's season will ultimately come down to the development of Desmond Ridder, but this wouldn't be the first time I underestimated Smith's unit. At number 29, the Los Angeles Rams. You can't take away their Super Bowl. However, winning it is likely the reason they're in this position. One look at the Rams roster will tell you that they are in a full-on rebuild. Realistically, that rebuild probably didn't have to start for another year or two. However, with the goal accomplished, it was probably time to cut loose and start over. Yet, with Aaron Donald and Sean McVay likely out of the way in the next year or two, the steep decline on the roster is a bittersweet ending for those two. At number 28, the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans certainly improved their roster this offseason, but they still have a ways to go before they're considered true contenders. Unless CJ Stroud really hits the ground running, it's unlikely we see the offense and defense complement one another enough to win double-digit games. Houston still needs talent and depth on the edge, and they absolutely need Derek Stingley Jr. to take the next step. At number 27, the Tennessee Titans. Listen, this wouldn't be the first time I grossly underestimated the Mike Vrabel-led Tennessee Titans. However, their offensive line is such a hodgepodge of mediocrity that it's tough to imagine that their ground and pound formula is going to have success. The Titans will need to lean on outstanding defensive performance, and Tennessee has struggled mightily to keep their defensive talent on the field over the past two seasons. I hope I'm wrong, though, because Jeffrey Simmons, Danico Autry, Harold Landry III, and Kevin Byard are some of my favorite defensive players in the entire NFL. At number 26, the Las Vegas Raiders. It feels as though there is about 75% of a contender brewing in Las Vegas. The jury's still out on Josh McDaniels as a head coach, but his offensive mind is unquestioned, particularly as a run game architect. And while the Las Vegas Raiders have reinforced their interior and the edge with Byron Young and Tyree Wilson, respectively, Patrick Graham's defense will deploy hopes and dreams in their pursuit of covering these NFC West wide receivers they'll face 6 times next season. The safety tandem isn't awful, but would it behoove them to address cornerback during free agency or the NFL draft so they could put Nate Hobbs back in a position conducive to the success he found as a rookie in the slot? At number 25, the Green Bay Packers. Until we see Jordan Love on the football field for an extended period of time, it's difficult to be too excited about the Packers. While adding Jaden Reed, Luke Musgrave, and Tucker Kraft proves that the Packers are finally at least trying to field enough weapons to get a realistic look at Love, counting on rookies to produce is a foolish endeavor. Seeing another season of Joe Barry's defense probably doesn't fill Green Bay Packers fans with much hope on that side of the ball either. At number 24, the Denver Broncos. None of the moves Denver made this offseason matter if Sean Payton can't figure out how to tread water with Russell Wilson. Throw the thought of Seattle's Wilson out the window. While it's never a certainty that he'll never get back to that point, it's incredibly unlikely that we'll ever see that player again. Broncos are also on their third consecutive defensive coordinator. Vance Joseph's defense won't look the same as Ejiro Evero's, and there's a chance it's simply not as sound with the personnel group. So even if the offense improves, it's unlikely that Denver's defense can replicate what it was able to achieve for most of 2022. At number 23, the Indianapolis Colts. Am I potentially too high on the Indianapolis Colts in 2023? I most likely am. But I believe that the floor for Anthony Richardson at QB is a lot higher than many believe. Justin Fields is and has always been a cleaner, pure passer than Richardson, but the situation surrounding him in Chicago was a travesty compared to Richardson in Indianapolis. Richardson's legs, paired with Jonathan Taylor's legs, provide 4 legs worthy of 20-plus yard touchdown runs left and right. An explosive rushing attack like that is an incredibly dangerous prospect for defenses to contend with. The Colts' offensive line still stands to improve, but they have enough on both sides of the ball to be competitive even while Richardson grows as a passer. At number 22, the Chicago Bears. The Bears look like a completely new football team offensively, but the defensive depth chart is still very much a work in progress. We thought they'd spend like bandits after a bank robbery, but while they definitely made moves, they were far more reserved than expected in free agency. Chicago still currently has $30.7 million in effective cap space, which is over $10 million more than the next closest team. The Bears may not be competitors in 2023, but they've built the infrastructure necessary to get a legitimate feel for Justin Fields' potential, which was the absolute bare minimum they needed for the 2023 NFL season. At number 21, the Washington Commanders. Sam Howell is going to get every opportunity to start for the Commanders in 2023, but Jacoby Brissett is coming off his best season as a pro with the Cleveland Browns. In fact, if it weren't for the Browns' poor defensive output, he would have had them competing for a playoff spot. The Commanders' defense finally figured it out a season ago, and after years of expectations, they finally were a top defense. They added 2 defensive backs in the draft to bring them a bit more explosiveness and versatility to the back end. The offensive depth chart is solid in most spots, making Washington's outlook nearly entirely QB dependent on the next season. At number 20, the New England Patriots. Patriots offense should be better than a season ago by default. Bill Belichick's decision to hand the offensive reins over to Matt Patricia and Joe Judge will remain one of the league's greatest mysteries for years to come. The question remains, how much better can it become, and can the Patriots defense continue to produce ridiculous results over the long run? At number 19, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Patriots have 6 Super Bowl victories since the turn of the century, but no organization boasts the sort of continuity and overall consistency as the Steelers. They are simply allergic to underachieving, and that is their organizational superpower, and Mike Tomlin is at the forefront of that. Pittsburgh made some excellent moves during the NFL draft to address some of their more pressing needs, but in the end, their success in 2023 will come down to what kind of upside they can squeeze out of Kenny Pickett. At number 18, the Cleveland Browns. The Browns corrected their mistake from a season ago. They've righted their wrong and decided that fielding defensive tackles who can play football at an NFL starting caliber level is, in fact, important. Adding Cedric Tillman alongside Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore is a fun trio of wide receivers, and the offensive line and rushing attack should remain one of the best units in the league. They simply need Deshaun Watson to show the world that he's the player on the field that we saw in Houston. At number 17, the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota won an incredibly fluky 13 games a season ago, but that doesn't mean it came out of nowhere. Winning all those close games isn't a sustainable model, but the roster itself looks strong on paper. Adding Jordan Addison to complement Justin Jefferson is good news for Kirk Cousins. Meanwhile, the defense should be talented enough to keep the team competitive in the NFC North. At number 16, the Carolina Panthers. What can the rookie QB show us? How quickly can Jonathan Mingo grasp the playbook and clean up his route running? Will Terrace Marshall Jr. ever round into form? Can DJ Shark stay healthy for a full 17-game season? The Panthers' playoff contention will come down to exactly how efficient their offense can be. It's asking a lot of the number 1 pick, but that's why you draft the guy, right? At number 15, the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are always one of the most exciting teams in football every offseason. There is something about the powder blue and sunny California skies that just gets the people going. But adding Kellen Moore and Quentin Johnson to the offensive firepower certainly helps as well. The Chargers also added to the defensive front 7, which was the problem for the team a season ago. At number 14, the New Orleans Saints. The Saints roster may be aging in certain positions, but they're ready to compete in what looks to be an underwhelming NFC South. The Panthers are likely right on their heels, but the New Orleans defense is a bit more well-rounded, and their passing attack should be much more improved with Derek Carr under center, alongside a finally healthy Michael Thomas. At number 13, the New York Giants. I have liked nearly every move the Giants have made over the past year or so, and the NFL draft was the next step in their evolution. They needed to add a deep threat, and they did exactly that with Jalen Hyatt. Additionally, the Giants absolutely needed another cornerback to play press man, and Deonte Banks fills that need like a glove. John Michael Schmitz should be a plus starter at center immediately, which was another large need for the Giants. If the Giants defense can marginally improve and their offense can find some more explosiveness, they should once again be competitive in the playoff picture. At number 12, the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks and the Giants surprised everybody a season ago, but that won't be the case any longer, especially after seeing how well Geno Smith played in 2022. Adding Jackson Smith-Njigba and Zach Charbonnet to the mix offensively certainly shouldn't hurt their offensive efficiency. Meanwhile, Seattle made big moves to reshape the way that their defense will look in 2023, adding Devin Witherspoon as the second half of an unbelievable cornerback tandem, and also adding Draymond Jones to the defensive front. At number 11, the Detroit Lions. The Lions pulled the old switcheroo on us in the 2023 NFL Draft. Brian Branch was almost universally loved by the media, but was had by the Lions with the 45th pick in the NFL Draft. Additionally, a team that has spent the last 2 seasons building along the trenches and at high-value positions gave value a middle finger, drafting a running back at 12, a linebacker at 18, and then a tight end at 34. But there's little doubt that they drafted good football players, making it interesting to see how things shake out. Adding Hendon Hooker to develop behind Jared Goff was icing on the cake for a team that crushed free agency while already having a ton of franchise momentum. At number 10, the Baltimore Ravens. Speaking of momentum, things looked ugly in Baltimore for a long time. However, just before the NFL draft kicked off, they announced a deal for Lamar Jackson, who now will make more money than any other quarterback per season in NFL history. He also secured the second highest practical guaranteed total in NFL history, behind only Deshaun Watson. A healthy and motivated Lamar Jackson is still arguably the most dangerous player on any given football field, and the assets they've spent trying to improve their offensive firepower gives us hope that Baltimore can rebound in 2023. At number 9, the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jacksonville Jaguars are a force to be reckoned with offensively. They caught fire towards the back end of 2022 and added Calvin Ridley to the mix along with Tank Bigsby in the NFL draft. If Anton Harrison and Walker Little can hold down the fort until Cam Robinson returns from his suspension of an undisclosed length, this offense should be one of the most efficient in football. Their ceiling will come down to their ability to grow defensively based off their strong finish in 2022. At number 8, the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins are in a weird spot. They're likely one of the best 10 teams in the NFL, yet they're likely to also be the third best team in their own division. However, Miami's offense is so efficient that it really doesn't matter. Maybe Vic Fangio can get this defense up to a more respectable level than a season ago, because they sure have spent the offseason addressing just that. However, the Jets already had a talented offense and one of the league's best defenses, and they added Aaron Rodgers to make it so the QB position was not the Achilles heel of their team. At number 7, the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys have had a very solid offseason, but solid won't get the job done in the NFC East when they're staring down at a Thanos-like giant that is Howie Roseman. Adding Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore was outstanding, and seeing them finally address the middle of the defense was the breath of fresh air. But for every step Dallas took forward, Philadelphia found a way to take 3. At number 6, the San Francisco 49ers. Until we get clarity on Brock Purdy's shoulder, Trey Lance's development, or Sam Darnold's Incredibles villain face, it's hard to peg the 49ers as one of the league's elite teams, even if they're incredibly exciting on both sides of the ball. Steve Wilkes is a strong defensive coordinator, but the unit could still see a net loss in production from DeMeco Ryans, who was truly an inspirational defensive play caller and teacher. At number 5, the New York Jets. Could the Jets trade for Aaron Rodgers fail in absolutely spectacular fashion? Absolutely. We've seen that story before with a former Packers Hall of Fame quarterback in New York. But there's simply way too much talent up and down this football team's roster not to be incredibly excited about their potential. At number 4, the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills remain one of the most talented teams in the NFL. Adding Dalton Kincaid gives them a weapon in the slot that can be used as a mismatch in 12 personnel groupings. And the addition of Osiris Torrance adds a physical presence to the offensive line. Kaiir Elam's progression on the outside will be critical for Buffalo's defensive upside. Returning Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde should provide a calming sensation for Bills Mafia everywhere, worried about defending the Jets and Dolphins wide receivers. At number 3, the Cincinnati Bengals. I was told the Bengals fans were upset by the Jordan Battle selection, and that seems silly to me. While the long-term solution at right tackle isn't currently on the roster, Jonah Williams takes away from it being a pressing need that they needed to throw a dart at a draft prospect there. The Bengals must contend with the Chiefs, Bills, Dolphins, Jets, and Jaguars passing attacks in the AFC. They need to be able to cover. Adding DJ Turner at 60 felt like a steal, and while Battle will never likely be a Pro Bowl caliber player, he has the skill set to be an immediate impact starter. And at the 95th pick in the NFL draft, that seems good to me. At number 2, the Philadelphia Eagles. Listen, I'm not sure what kind of deal Howie Roseman made or who he made it with, but whatever he has to do in return, it was worth it. It was all worth it. Having Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith fall into his lap is salt in the wound for every other GM in the NFL already looking at an uphill battle for being regarded as best in the league. He really looked at the 2021 Georgia Bulldogs defense and said, I want them all. And the NFL just let him do it. He now has continued to build that defensive line into one of the most dominant units in the NFL. And at number 1, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, enough said. Thank you for tuning in. Who would you rank as your top 5 teams in the NFL? Let me know in the YouTube comments, and make sure while you're there, you are hitting that like button, subscribing to the channel, and hitting that bell so you don't miss out on any more content.